This is my mid-travel Ford Raptor. The truck features RPG's full catalog and was initially built by RPG themselves before being maintained and built upon by Hanna Race and Design. Some of you might know some of my other projects if you're a BMW enthusiast. I spearheaded builds like my 4.6-liter V8 1M clone and its sister car, the Race GT, a rear-wheel drive rallycross-inspired project. With most of my BMW builds, I had significant sponsorship support. I worked with brands all the way from concept to completion. They would provide me with support and parts, and I would provide them with marketing opportunities. I attended all the major West Coast BMW events, often earning awards. I had articles and magazine covers for print and online with all the major car websites and blogs, as well as all the forums. I was a Hot Wheels Legends tour judge. I got to go on Jay Leno's Garage. And I was even honored enough to have my car featured on Tuned with Matt Farah.
What we have here is possibly the best BMW you could build at any price.
It wasn't until my good friend Matt got a Ford Raptor that my group of car friends started to transition from going to the circuit to off-roading. Matt sort of brought it in initially as like this thing that he was going to do, as he was going to off-road a little bit, but he'd also use it as a tow rig, which we did. But then he started taking us out and we started going to EXO runs and stuff like that. And slowly, my group of friends all started to get trucks. Despite being into off-roading before I was involved in cars, I was one of the later guys who got into off-roading with our car group. And again, it was Matt's fault. He had an allocation for a wild track Bronco. He wasn't going to take advantage of it, so I ended up taking his Bronco, and that's where I started. Off-roading has a lot of similarities to the racetrack as far as driving goes, but there's an element of adventure with off-roading that you just don't find at the racetrack. I really love the Bronco and how it drives, and it wasn't too long before I started modifying it. I called up RPG Off-Road and I ordered their full catalog and some King shocks on all corners, and the truck drove great. I really enjoyed it for about a year with the guys, but I quickly hit its limits and decided that I needed more. And that's when I decided to get a Ford Raptor. I ended up buying a 2017 Super Cab 802A in Avalanche. Aside from having a sunroof, this truck was everything I wanted, and it was in immaculate condition.
It looks like somebody used this as a trunk and never hauled anything. Yeah, it's not even scratched. And it's hella clean. Okay, pretty buff car. Truck in this game.
Having success with using RPG's parts on the Ford Bronco, turning to them for my Ford Raptor felt like the obvious choice. This would turn out to be a huge mistake. On December 5th, 2022, I contacted Christian at RPG and he began working on the first estimate, which he would send me a few days later on December 8th, 2022. The first estimate for the build included their bull kit and their standard rear bypass kit, rack, etc. The total estimate was $29,274.45. Then they sent me a follow-up invoice for $1,350 for paint and Line X for the fender and rear bed sides. The next day, on December 9th, 2022, I sent a wire for $17,329.66. This included a $440.59 credit that I had with RPG from a few months back when I switched my Fox coilovers I had on order to Kings. On January 10th, 2023, I sent a second wire for $5,000. On February 6th, 2023, I made a third wire for $12,500 and I added some items to the build. And on February 13th, 2023, I wired $13,495.89 to close off the balance on the estimates. At this point, I was paid in full for everything I'd been quoted for. And I even added a few more items to the build, like a radio, a rear bumper, and some more Baja Designs lights. Having too much trust in RPG and their reputation and paying above the 50% deposit was the second major mistake that I made in this project. On February 20th, 2023, I voiced my concerns to Christian about the methods we had on the order and their compatibility with the Alcon brakes. Online I had read you needed a spacer, and I didn't want to run a spacer. It's just one more thing to get lost on the trail. So I suggested we move to a -12 offset wheel. Christian said changing wheels would be no problem, but he also said that RPG makes a special adapter that would allow me to run my zero offset methods without the need of a spacer. So we stuck with the methods. But later, you'll see that this is not true. But we'll get to that when we get there. On February 23rd, 2023, Christian set the long-awaited date to drop the truck off for March 20th, 2023, and said they should only need around 2 to 3 weeks to finish the truck, which based on my experience from building BMWs seemed extremely aggressive, but Christian seemed confident in email and on the phone. On March 20th, 2023, I drove the truck down to RPG Off-Road in Rancho Santa Margarita. I had a brief conversation with Christian and I flew home. And Christian took the original estimate and he turned it into a legit invoice. And it showed that I owed an $11,349.05 balance. This balance didn't bother me as I was still well above the 50% threshold, so I didn't plan on sending them any more money until the truck was finished. Four weeks after dropping the truck off, I asked Christian for an update, and he told me that the front kit was on the truck and that they were going to get to the rear next week. This puts us behind schedule, but things take time, stuff happens at shops, other things pop up, so this is kind of about the pace that I expected. I asked for some pics, but I never got any. On May 3rd, 2023, I asked RPG if the truck was likely going to be done in 2 weeks. The reason I was asking was because we had an off-roading trip coming up and I wanted to take the truck out. I figured, based on what they had told me earlier, that seemed reasonable to me, so I asked if the truck would be done. Christian told me that they were planning on working my truck every day next week and that they have the entire week blocked off for my truck. He said the fiberglass would be done by Monday or Tuesday and that the rear suspension would be done by Friday. He also said that the hardware for the Alcon brake kit was missing and back-ordered, and that was causing a minor delay. On May 9th, 2023, Christian emailed me and said the rear was coming along nicely. He said he was going to keep me posted on the progress. And again, I asked him for pics, but didn't get any. In the coming weeks, I had no updates from RPG, but I did see that they teased their 5-link conversion kit for the Gen 2. I emailed Christian on May 25th and asked him if they had made no progress on the rear of my truck, if we could swap to the 5-link kit. Christian said we could swap to the kit, but it would add a few more months to the build. At this point, the truck had already taken longer than expected and I'd missed a few trips off-roading with the guys in my Raptor, so a few more trips in the Bronco wouldn't hurt. On July 10th, I asked Christian if the truck was still on target to be done in late September or early October. That's usually when we go on a bunch of trips in the fall in the desert. Christian said that the truck would be done no later than that and he was going to keep me posted on the progress. Keep in mind, I still have not gotten photos. I figured if the truck was sitting there, I might as well inquire about gears and see if there's some other work that can be done while there's downtime with the build. And I asked Christian to gear the truck, he gave me an estimate and it seemed fair, so I said let's do it. August 28th, I messaged Christian for an update. He told me RPG's goal was to have my truck done by the end of September, which was about a month away. About a week later, I sold some car parts and someone wanted to pay me via wire, so I just had them make a $10,000 deposit to RPG to be applied straight toward the balance on my invoice. October 5th, we missed the deadline. I emailed Christian for an update and I was told that the brackets needed to be welded to the rear of the truck and that the truck would likely be done in December 2023. I asked again for photos, but wasn't sent any. I've seen zero photographic evidence of any progress whatsoever on my truck in over 6 months since I dropped it off. On November 15th, I asked Christian if the truck was still going to be done in December. I had a friend who was in an accident in his Raptor and needed to pick up some stock parts, and I was trying to coordinate it where he drives me down, I get my truck, and he drives back with the stock parts. Christian told me that they were pretty close to wrapping up the rear kit with about half the brackets welded on, and that he was hoping to have the truck done by the end of the year, which would be late December. As mid-December came, pretty clear that my truck was not going to be done at the end of the year. My friend went down to RPG to pick up the stock parts, and it was actually him who took the first photo updates of my truck, not from Christian at RPG, who was so busy these past 9 months that he couldn't be bothered to take out his iPhone and email over some photos. On January 9th, 2024, I emailed Christian for an update. He told me that the truck was coming along slower than expected, but said the truck was close to going to paint, which was reassuring. I told him I was going off-roading in March and was wondering if the truck would be finished by then. Christian said that should be no problem at all. February 7th, I emailed Christian RPG and asked if we were still on track to have the truck done this month. I told him I was okay taking the truck unpainted if it made the delivery date more realistic. He told me that they needed about 2 more weeks on the upper links and Panhard bar mounts, and then once those were in from laser cut, he was going to get everything welded, and then the truck would be ready for paint. Once it was done at paint, he said it would go to Line-X, and then he said they'd do finishing touches like my Garmin GPS and things like that. This is pretty similar to the email that he sent me 18 weeks prior. 3 weeks later, on February 29th, I emailed Christian to see if the brackets came in, and I asked if we could push to get the truck done next month, as we were approaching the 12-month mark. He told me that the brackets were coming in no later than tomorrow, and he said as soon as they came in, they were going to get them on the truck and get my vehicle to paint. We missed the March deadline, and the day before the truck's 1-year anniversary at RPG, Christian sends me my first photo update. The truck's starting to take form, and I'm actually getting pretty excited about getting my truck back and finally getting on the trail. Then RPG went silent for a while, and then on May 15th, 2024, I asked them for a status update on the truck. I was told that the bed is going to Line-X, and then they said it would go to alignment, then gears, and then paint. All things that they have told me before. On June 5th, I got my second photo update from RPG. It showed the Line-X and the suspension done, and I was told the truck was going to go to gears. And it did, and it sat in the gear shop for weeks. I was pretty much at the end of my patience. RPG told me I was the second person to order their 5-link kit, and to see them finishing installs on other customers' vehicles during this time, it's just a big slap in the face. This build just should not have taken this long. I'm seeing SVC crank out half a dozen mid-travel trucks in the time that my truck has been at RPG, and these are 4-link trucks.
I am picking up my pre-runner that has been at SVC for the last 3 months, I think. I haven't seen this truck in 3 months.
And in that time, Kibitech has built several fully custom pre-runners. So why is my truck, which is essentially a glorified bolt-on truck, taking this long? It's because RPG isn't prioritizing it. Which leads me to my third biggest mistake on this project, which was giving RPG too much slack and letting them take advantage of my patience and goodwill. So I called HRD, Hannah Race and Design, and I asked them, what would it take to finish a truck in this state? They told me it would take a week or 2 max, excluding paint. So on August 26, 2024, a year and a half after dropping off the truck, I pulled the plug with RPG. I told them that I wasn't confident that they were going to finish my truck by my group's Reno to Vegas run next month, and that I spoke to HRD, who said that they were willing to finish the truck. And I told them that I would like to have them pick up the truck when it got back from the gear shop. I asked them to please include all the parts that I ordered with the truck that were on hand, and to deduct all the unrealized labor and parts that were not on hand off my invoice. Christian said that the truck would be back at RPG in a day or so, and that he would let me know what needed to get done as soon as it arrived. He also told me that the front bumper was not built yet, which contradicted what they had told me before, where they said all of my parts for the build would be on hand before I dropped the truck off. Then I got a call from Corey, the owner of RPG, and he essentially pleaded with me to give him another week to finish the truck. He said they were going to be all hands on deck and that they were going to get everything done except for a few items. And against my better judgment, I let him do it. I said, okay, Corey, you guys have 1 more week to do those things. They ended up taking a bit over a week, and getting the truck to HRD, there was a bit more back and forth than there should have been. Before dropping the truck off at HRD, I asked for the updated invoice for everything that had been done on the truck with a cost breakdown. Christian told me that it was looking like there was a balance and that I owed them money, which I knew couldn't be true. The amount of parts and labor that wasn't realized on the truck should have negated the balance on the invoice. Christian sent me a bill for $2,770.59. He included some items that were obviously not on the truck. The biggest one being paint. He was trying to charge me for paint when the truck was clearly unpainted. So he made an adjustment to the invoice, and it actually turned out that they owed me a little bit of money. Later I would find out that there were other parts that they charged me for on this invoice that they never delivered on. After the truck was finally in HRD's possession, that's when I could see the extent of the situation. That's when things went from a customer service issue to actual damages. Ignoring their ugly fiberglass install, look at the taillight that they cracked. They glued this back together. They admitted they broke my taillight, and they said they would fix it multiple times and never did. Hey, remember when Christian said that my wheels would fit on the Alkin brakes without a spacer? Check it out. Turns out they don't. And they drove the truck without a spacer, and they scraped up both the calipers and the wheels. Check out this exhaust job that I paid for. It doesn't even have a hanger. I don't even know how they drove it down the freeway to HRD. And the intercooler that they sold me had a cracked Y pipe, which again, they said they would fix multiple times and never did. Hey, those RPG center caps that I ordered, guess what? They don't fit the wheels that I also ordered from them. Oh, and the jack that they charged me for, this 2.5 ton big wheel jack, yeah, they gave me the standard non-big wheel jack. And hey, they charged me for a mount, and they never included one. Powder coating on the box link bars, as stated on their website, yeah, they gave them to me unpowder coated. But don't worry, they charged me full price. HRD began quickly working on the truck. They did point out to me some issues on the fiberglass install, but I chose to have them painted anyways. They welded an exhaust hanger on, and they got those box link bars powder coated. Trying to get the truck ready in a couple weeks so I would have it for our Reno to Vegas run. We didn't really have time to fabricate a custom bumper, so Bailey suggested that I order an SVC bumper. RPG never supplied the replacement Y pipe, so in the interest of time, I ordered an SVC intercooler. The truck's nearly been at HRD for a month, and Christian tells me that Corey's been out of town and they're working on the new facility, and that when he gets back, he's going to cut me a check for the work that was not completed. But despite having extra work beyond what we originally planned for, HRD did meet the deadline and get the truck ready enough for me to take on the trail with my friends. This was the first time I had seen my truck in over 1.5 years, and it looked pretty damn cool. Had to go get new license plates day before we leave on our trip because RPG thought it would be cool to put someone else's license plate on the truck. So getting the truck ready for tomorrow. You can see all of these lines right here. That's all from RPG not protecting the glass when they were welding it. And yeah, all the rear glass is ruined. Like, it looks like it's just dirty, but it's actually in the glass. So the truck was finally on the trail. This was a super exciting moment for me. It took a lot of stress to get here. I still, at this point, had a lot of negative feelings with RPG as they've made no effort to resolve anything. But it was an amazing time to be back on the trail in my new truck with my friends. That wasn't to say that the truck didn't have issues. RPG's fiberglass install that HRD pointed out, yeah, all those failed. Lasted maybe 20 miles? And then all the hardware that they had up here, like all these screws, all of those vibrated off, like almost immediately. That guy right there is stripped out.
Yeah, this thing just totally stripped out. Like it was just already loose.
I think it probably came stripped out.
Yeah, probably did. It probably just. Oh.
RPG didn't clearance the suspension, and I had a fender blowout on a pretty mild obstacle. But all in all, it was great to be out there. Had some amazing memories with my friends, and thankfully the 5-link kit felt pretty good. The bolt kit overall, other than the blowout, felt pretty good. and all of the issues due to RPG's poor craftsmanship could be resolved. Unfortunately, at my own expense. Over the next few months, I would push on Christian and Corey at RPG to resolve these issues for me. I'd still been given no check, despite multiple verbal promises, and they were just leaving me out to dry. I filed a complaint with the California Bureau of Automotive Repair. They looked over my documents and said I had a very credible case. They started communicating with RPG to act as an intermediary, but RPG ghosted them and then left the state. Basically, they can't do anything unless if RPG is operating within the state. But they did mention if RPG comes back to California and tries to operate on vehicles, they can step in again. My lawyers brought to my attention several other court complaints against Corey and RPG. And while it's not an excuse for how RPG treated me or my truck, it does potentially offer some insight into what's going on behind the scenes if these claims are true. But here we are, February 26th, 2025, and I still have not had a resolution with RPG, despite giving them many, many, many chances. The damages are pretty big, and they do not care. They're on Instagram, trying to sell parts, acting like none of this happened. And I can't let that slide. I had to make this video. I had to tell you guys my situation. I brought the receipts. It's all here. And I didn't build this truck because I had to. I built this truck because I love off-roading. And if you're watching this video, there's a big chance that you love off-roading too. We do this because it's fun, because it's a release, because it's an escape from our everyday lives. And when a company takes advantage of that, they take advantage of our enthusiasm and our passion for something, and they turn it into a negative, painful, long drawn out experience, everyone in the community gets hurt. So while I stand here, I might sound pretty negative toward them, but to be honest, in the beginning of this journey, I was actually very positive. I had a lot of belief in RPG as a company. I liked their brand, I liked their products, I had faith in their employees and their craftsmanship. I felt so good about this. So good that I spent tens of thousands of dollars and went down this journey with them. And this just went so wrong, and they treated me so bad. This isn't the end of this story. Stay tuned. Oh, hey, and if any of you had your truck at RPG around this time and your license plate went missing, hit me up. I gotcha.